Hey, so this is a bit of a disclaimer before the rant coming up. It's a rant mixed up with different ideas, but I'm trying to focus on the upcoming contested election in the United States of America on January 6th. Congress is going to meet, and then they're supposed to do the official final certification of who is going to be the president of the United States of America. And there's already some things on the board that say it's going to be contested. So, depending on the information that you have about the things in the past, it's going to change your expectations of what happens tomorrow. What happens tomorrow will actually happen the way it actually happens. The things that will happen, but our coverage, our expectations, and the ramifications of that are going to differ. And problems occur not because of what X is, but because of how we define X. So in this rant thought, I'm just giving some ideas and thoughts of what I've been seeing from it and what I kind of expect. And I would like to see what you think and what you see and what you expect and why people might say certain things and do other things. So that's it for now, just getting into it. This is on January 5th, so this is the eve of this, and I think it's going to be a big day. It's going to be one of those historical things. Every day is history, I guess, but this is going to be one of those historical days that's written about, and a lot of things have come to this. I've been following politics in the United States of America for quite some time. I'm recording this from Nairobi, Kenya at the time being, but I've lived in the States, been following it, and a lot of interest to it, and it still has a lot of effect, I think, globally. A lot of eyes in the world are going to be watching what's happening in January 6th in Washington, D.C. So we're going to see if it's just going to be straightforward confirmation of Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America, or if it's going to be a contested election. And this began with, I think, a few representatives in the House of Representatives in Congress. There's Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. There's 100 people in the Senate, and I think then 432 or something like that in the House of Representatives. Now you need, due to the Constitution and the way it goes, supposedly if you have some people objecting from against the elections, but you need a senator and a representative, the congressman, to object in written form in order for it not to be going. And then the vice president is the one who's in charge of actually accepting the electors. I have separate videos about that content. You can look into it. This is just a legal process. The vice president's the one who can decide to actually accept it or not, and that's going to happen. So right now there is an objection, started by Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. He was the first one to come on to add on to the people from the House of Representatives that had mentioned that they would be objecting. And then you have what's it called? Now Ted Cruz and a few other people have added on to it. So now I think it's up to about 14 senators who are going to object in written. They're going to write down their objection and turn it in with the people from the House of Representatives. And this is unlike what the Democrats have been doing for the last couple of elections, where a Republican won, where it was just people from the House of Representatives that came up and objected. So my thoughts on this. People look at this and they say, look, Trump has been fighting, he should just give up and it's going to be bad for him. And I think regardless, it's been positive. Regardless, his fighting back, not just in the sense that we in general like winners. We in general like people who fight back. We in general like people who don't just sit back. I think that's a common thing. This whole idea of people just give up and people have been telling him just to sit back, just take it, it's lost, you lost. And nobody really likes that. There is something on the political left that I've noticed in the United States of America that seems to enshrine weakness as something that's positive, but that's not what's positive for most people. And his fighting back has shown and exposed certain things. You're looking at the room. I've been following the actual evidentiary hearings on these things, and some of the things are like, that's ridiculous. I can't believe you talk about this Venezuela thing. If you talk about this kind of connection, where's the actual evidence of this? If you're saying this person actually had an interview or a video where they're talking to some people, and then they're saying, oh, look, I'm against the TV, like Donald Trump's looking to win, and I'm in charge of this company that runs these actual machines. Where's the tape? Show me the tape. Don't actually talk about this thing until you have the tape. But when you have actual figures, like, look, I'm watching the actual election on the night, and I see them shut down, and then I see Trump come out and say, look, they're going to why are they shutting these things down? Then the next day they're saying, Trump is calling for them to shut it down. When I just watched the actual people themselves say there's a water main break, say we're actually shutting it down, and then the next day it's covered like it was Trump who's calling for the shutdown. And this has been a common thing that's been done with Trump. He says something and then they twist what he says around, they pick a certain part out of it, and then they act like that's what it's about. When that's not the case. You actually get there and you can actually listen to it. You can actually look at the actual evidence. When I look at this and I say, in Georgia, the people who are running the election, I think the Attorney General of Georgia. He says, we've signed on with Dominion. And part of the good reason about Dominion is if we have a contested election, everything is scanned so I can just, with one click, release this out to the public. And that's not done. So I wonder, why aren't they releasing that kind of information out to the public? And those are the kind of questions that I have out there. There's enough evidence. There's a site called here'stheevidence.com. You can go check out the evidence there. There's evidence actually there. There's actually videos. There's a lot of videos showing what has actually happened. Okay, not the videos. There's that one video where I said you were looking at the room where the people in the Georgia, in the State Farm Arena, they pull some ballots out from underneath. They go out and they seem to be counting it. What do you think that is? When people talk about, oh, you're disenfranchising millions of people, the court cases have been thrown out. There's no evidence in this one. It started with there is no evidence. Then it started now we're at there is no widespread evidence. But you don't even need that widespread evidence. Sure, you're talking about 80 million votes supposedly, but when you actually look at the actual figures of it, it's about 300,000 in those contested states that didn't actually answer right on the day of the election, that took days and days to actually come up with a thing. You look at the actual numbers of states. Recently, you look at the recording that came out with Raffensperger or something in the call that he had with Trump, where he's talking about, find 11,000 votes. What he was saying in the actual full conversation of it, he simply says, look, we found these different cases that are contested. We found 100,000 votes here. We found 50,000 votes here. We found these and these questionable ones here. So all you need to do is if you look and you find 11,000, that's enough to overturn this thing. And that 11,000, because we're talking about, millions of people disenfranchised. No, when you actually look at the states, the actual difference between the actual wins are a lot lower. And this is the thing, votes do count in that sense. You don't need widespread fraud in order to actually win something like this. You can just target certain places. You look at certain cities that had some questionable behavior acting in there, and then they flip side, they say one vote, like one person disenfranchised, one person not free is everybody enslaved. In this situation, is one person disenfranchised, everybody disenfranchised? Is one fraudulent vote means the whole thing is fraudulent? You see a kind of dichotomy when it comes to that. But I just want to tie this up with something that recently happened with the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles is a National Football League team. They play American football for the international people that might be watching this. It's kind of like rugby mixed with soccer and something else, and chess all together. But anyway, so it came to the end of the season. I lived in Washington, D.C., so I was kind of by default a fan of the Washington Redskins, but I played football as well, and in high school and in college, and it's pretty much the only sport I still follow on a regular basis and have some interest in it. Now, the NFC East, which is a division, was pretty horrible this year. They started off really horribly, but in the way of the system, the winner of every division makes the playoffs. So there was, on the last day, the Dallas Cowboys played the New York Giants. They're both in the NFC East. And the Philadelphia Eagles play the Washington Redskins, and they're both in the NFC East. In this situation, it had to be, whoever won the Giants match would have to have the Washington Redskins lose in order for them to get into the playoffs. So the Cowboys and the Giants played first, and the Giants ended up winning. And then now it was up to the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Washington Redskins on a really tight game. And we'll get back to this with Alex Smith in there, who's just an amazing human being. There's a lot of things in here that just show things about America, and not just, I think it's America, humanity, and things like this, the winning and the losing, and the perception of what's going to happen here in January 6th. I'm going to try to tie this all in together. So you have the situation where they come in, and then the Washington Redskins are playing a tight game. They have a really strong defense. Their offense is garbage, pretty much. They're not garbage, but they're trying. They just don't really have. They're not meshing anywhere as close to defense. The defense is one of the top in the actual league. The offense is one of the lowest scoring ones. The Philadelphia Eagles, they recently won. I think it was 3 seasons ago or 2 seasons ago. They won the actual Super Bowl, but then with some issues with Carson Wentz, the quarterback of the team. He was taken out. They had given him a massive contract because they had believed in him as an actual athlete, and then he had a really amazing season under the same coach, under the same GM, and they were talking about how this is the future, this one-pass option from Doug Peterson. And Howie Roseman, I think that's the guy from, I might be wrong, Howie Roseman might be somebody to do with the Houston Rockets, might mix it and stuff. But anyway, so they're talking about how he's great at picking talent and getting and cobbling this team together, getting these people in, and then they talk about that kind of situation. So you have that going, but this year they're just not playing that well. So it comes to this thing. Jalen Rose has been in there playing. Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose. No, Jalen Rose is not Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose is a basketball player. I'm getting this mixed up. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts. Great last name for a football player. Hurts. He was a quarterback from Alabama. He was drafted, I think, in the second round last year, and he's been starting for the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz was sat, and then they said, okay, let's see if Jalen Rose is going to be a player of the future. And towards the end of this game, Jalen Rose hadn't scored a passing touchdown in the first half. I think they were down by maybe 10 points or so. And then they decided to sit Jalen Hurts and put up somebody else who is like, I think it was like a backup. He was on the practice squad, then he was elevated to second string once they deactivated Carson Wentz. And Doug Peterson had talked about how he's actually going to play this guy. And then people were like, they're throwing the game. You have people from the New York Giants and the New York Giants fans, New York Giants players are saying, what's going on? Why are they sitting down Jalen Hurts? They can still win this game. And then people are talking about how the Philadelphia Eagles threw this game. They tanked. They threw the game in order to get a better draft pick next year. They could have won, but they decided we're not going to win. The draft pick is more important. Now, whether or not that was actually done, that's the perception from some people, and they're saying that's a garbage thing to do. That's horrible. There's a lot of people talking about that. I think it's going to be a passe thing. It's going to be something that's going 24/7 news environment. People talk about things, but people get to pass on. Whether or not it happened or not, that's the perception, and it's being treated in a negative way. Now, if Trump had come out like Hillary Clinton after the night of the election and just said, oh, yeah, or not sent it, sent out the spokesperson like Hillary Clinton when she spent out Podesta on the night off in the Javits Center. Well, I was outside with people outside the Javits Center after hearing that Trump had actually been given the win in that situation. And then the next day come out and then say, okay, I concede and things like this. If Trump had done that, he would have been viewed by some people to just be throwing it. That there's still a fight out there. There's still a chance to actually fight and a chance to actually win, a chance to actually achieve things by keeping up the fight. That's how I think it's being perceived. That's how I see when people look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they think you should have fought to the end. And some people say that. Some people say, oh, we're actually here. We're talking about this. We need to actually be fighting this. We shouldn't stop this. Like, we know we're not going to actually, you need to play. The players are out there to win. If you're telling the players to come out there, the culture and the things like that, you have to play the game to win. But it's also something grander. Whether or not you think they threw it, the Giants and the Cowboys played both those teams. If they had swept both those teams earlier on in the season, this wouldn't have been an issue. If they had beaten other teams earlier on in the season and only lost to the Cowboys, and only lost to the Eagles and the Redskins, they wouldn't be waiting for those other people. They let it get out of their hand by them also not doing things on their end. Sure, they had injuries. Sure, they had issues on their end. Saquon Barkley was injured, probably a top player in the Giants. Dak Prescott, the lead QB for the Cowboys, was injured. So that's probably the reasons that they were in those positions to begin with. But then you also have on the flip side, you have someone like the Redskins, where you have someone like Alex Smith, who he had this horrific accident that was injury that I think was almost on the same day that a previous Redskins quarterback Alex Theismann, something like that. He shattered his leg, but the technology and the ability and the fight and the know-how in the United States of America, in this National Football League, people look at the sports and say, why is sports important? Why do we even care about these things? Well, sports medicine has been one of the fields, due to the amount of money that's actually invested into it, that has led in ways to actually heal regular people. And Alex Smith went through some insane, like there's a documentary on Alex Smith following his process of healing from his leg just being shattered. He had gangrene in his leg. It's a trigger warning on the actual thing. They actually show inside his leg and the rotting. He almost died from it. He almost had the leg amputated, but they fixed it with this tech, and he had to wear this mechanical contraption that his wife has recently turned into something that looks like a Super Bowl trophy, and that story alone is just amazing, just to see the thing that he's come from that. Many people in Alex Smith's position would have given up. A lot of people, all the figures were saying, look, Alex, there's no chance you're actually going to be good at this. There's no chance you're actually going to be able to walk again. People were like, there's no chance you're going to be able to live. There's no chance you're going to have a leg. And he fought back from all that things. Despite what all the experts, despite what all these people were saying, he had the people around him to fight back and do this and be in that position. The Redskins started off their season pretty bad. People were like, oh, there's no chance they're going to be in there. They kept fighting. They kept going back. So there's also that side of the story. There's also those sides of the people who were encouraged of that fight. even if Doug Peterson did throw the game, there are people who are involved with the Eagles who understand, hey, we have an actual game. We have an institution. It's a business. We're continuous. It's not just this season. This season's gone anyway. Win or lose this last game, it's not really going to affect the next season that much. Maybe it's going to affect the actual people, the actual atmosphere, the actual mentality of the people. You don't know if it's people on your squad who are going to be boosted by that last win in order to actually go out. Like, I remember we didn't have a winning season in my high school team until we got to my senior year. I think the previous year, junior year, we lost 7 games, and then senior year we won 7 games because we just kept fighting. We just kept fighting through it. So I don't know if there was games where people gave up. I think there's probably games where I could have played harder, both in the winning and the losing seasons. But so you don't know where these things are. But the people are thinking, hey, when we come to this situation, if we have the difference between a 6th pick and a 4th pick, and we look at the actual players out there, and we can get somebody in this actual draft, and we can actually improve the team for the future, it might be okay to just put this other guy in, and then we lose the game, and we can improve our position, because this is a business. This is something. It's about something more than just the 2 people, just that competition. And that's what I'm looking at with this situation with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's about more than that. It's not just that. People are going to have different considerations. Don't think, oh, Pence is going to come out and just be the hero because he believes in Donald Trump and this and this. He has many other considerations. The Democrats and the people around you, the people who are saying there's no evidence, there's no this and this, it's not just because some people just hate Trump. But there's a lot of things out there where people have other considerations. It's about more than this. When you look at the United States of America, I think the fight back that Trump is doing is about more than just his ego. It's not just simply that. It's about understanding how the system works, understanding what is the actual process, what is civilization, what is the structure, what are the social contracts that we agree on, what is that union? Is it still the United States of America? Is it still viable to have elections in this sense? Is that your president? Are you just not my president? It's like my own president, hashtag like sanctuary citizen. It's all these things you can think about in this thing. So this is just mixed up thoughts talking about this thing. Pretty much what I'm coming down to say is fighting is fighting. Combating things, like pushing on for things, it's not just as simple as, hey, we're just talking about this one game, this one actual competition, this one actual decision. There's a lot of considerations, a lot of things that go into it that are exterior from that. And those were some thoughts that I've been having, and I was trying to like make some sense out of it. And this is just completely off the top of my head, as I mentioned. So I might go into the start and put a complete disclaimer that it's just complete rant, ramble, mixing all over the place. But I think that's just pretty much it. I have some other videos where I put on some more thought and ideas about it, and I will talk on this topic later on. I am looking into trying to get to a situation where I have more conversations with people, try to understand, because I think problems occur not because of what X is, because of how we define X. Some people truly believe, however they define the country, they believe Donald Trump fighting is somehow destroying this country. Some people on the other side would believe Donald Trump not fighting is them destroying the country. I think if you got to a situation where you can get both these people to define what they mean by country and destruction, I think you'd find a lot more understanding than you would before. But now we just have a situation where we just get constant information, where we just say, I believe this, and then I'm going to get all these sources of information that confirm my beliefs. And that doesn't lead to any understanding. That leads to you entrenching yourself in a position, because these are the people who you think are absurd because you've listened to 100 sources over the last 10 days that are telling you things you want to hear. They've been hearing 100 sources and you haven't been hearing any of those 100 sources. So they're thinking the same thing about you. So I'm trying to improve the understanding in the world, trying to get some better situations with that. And I think that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, goodbye. Just putting on a finishing thing. There were some thoughts I had. I was taking my daily walk and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do this video? And then when I actually create the video, some of the things are left out. So just to condense it all, thank you for listening. Thank you a lot. And just the general idea. When you look about something, if people who don't understand sports understand certain things, depending on where you are, there's people who are Philadelphia fans who think, okay, this is good. We got ourselves a new quarterback, or we got ourselves a new player. And if we hadn't lost that last game of the season against the Redskins, we weren't going to go anywhere anyway, we wouldn't have had this pick. There's a chance of that happening. Some people who are within the organization understand this is better for the actual league. You look at that aspect of it and people focus on that and they say, oh, look, these people should have kept fighting. They should have kept playing. This is the last game for some of these people. Then you look at some other ends. You look at people in the Redskins fans who are like, yeah, we're glad. We're glad we got in because we actually won. You don't know. There's a chance the Redskins might run the table next year. They play Tom Brady and the Bucks next, so probably not. But there's a chance they actually end up winning the Super Bowl. And now if whatever had happened, whether Doug Peterson threw the match or not, if they hadn't won that game, they wouldn't have gotten in there. And just in general, having this comeback of the year, they should even, I think people are saying they should rename the comeback of the year award to Alex Smith comeback player of the year, and I think they can. And Ron Rivera as well, the coach, he was actually had ongoing cancer treatments. And these are the things, you look at the United States of America and you look at these things and some of the negatives are looked at, but there's also that. There's also these people coming back from these just injuries or things that would have killed anyone else any other time. And even part of the pandemic situation, part of it is there's so many people with comorbidities in the United States of America that in other countries would have died from those comorbidities before, that now when they get something else, they've actually lived long enough with those issues that they get this one more virus and it takes them out. And they have a better system of medicine and actually tracking and getting the figures. Do you really think North Korea has the numbers that it's reporting? Do you really think Kenya only has 1,500 and something people dead from coronavirus, whatever they call it, coronavirus, however you want to actually define it, because they're testing things in the same way out of 45 million people, whereas the United States of America, it's something like 330,000? Do you think that's actually a thing, or is the US just better at actually getting some of these figures and tracking some of these things than other places? The people are also different. So you look at that. You can look at that fight situation and say, look, this is also a story of people fighting back. This is also a story of people actually trying to overcome certain things that they were told they were actually going to lose in the past. And those are the kind of things that I think you have in mind. So you look at that with the Philadelphia Eagles situation. And for some people, they just don't care. Some people don't even care about the sports. They're like, why is this an issue? Why do you even care about this thing? My team has won, or I don't really care about the sports. So that's how it is with the situation in, I think, the politics. Look at that situation. Look at that fight for Trump. For some people, it matters. For some people, it doesn't. For some people, they look at it as the Alex Smith type of thing. Trump has fought against all these things. And for some other people, they just look at like a Doug Peterson type of thing where it's like, oh, the Republicans are just throwing it because they have no interest. But just the way some Republicans are thinking, let's just go along with the establishment. This is for the betterment, for the greater good of the party, for the greater good of myself, for the greater good of my own understanding of what the United States of America is. I'm not going to combat. I'm not going to fight as much as I possibly can because it's lost. It's a lost thing anyway. And some people might actually think that's a valid thing. So some people will be there protesting. We're going to see the different coverage of it, or you might see no coverage of it, depending on where you are, because they want to show the numbers. They not want to show the numbers. So anyway. So I think that's it. I think that's really it. That's really it for the it. And if I think of anything else to add after, before editing this and posting it, I might still put that in there. But this is my thoughts. I just wanted to get this. Part of my purpose of doing this is just to get these thoughts out, so put them out, and then sometimes I go back later on and I'm like, okay, well, this is what I was saying at that time. Because like recently they just saw this thing. This was officially gotten into an official contested election. I think Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell just recently put in some kind of law, some kind of majority for it to be contested. They're kind of tweaking what it was before. So I think the chances are it's from what I'm seeing right now, I think there will be a vote to have the actual 10-day thing that Ted Cruz proposed. I don't think it will actually be adopted because I think the system itself will just go ahead with Joe Biden in there. It's not what I would prefer, but I think that's what's going to happen. And then from there, you've seen information, you've gotten actual details. Something in specific, I was talking about this. So once that happened, 1 second. Okay, Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi derailed me because they are also just individuals that just make me go, her. With one of the fight things as well, like those people like Jimmy Dore was leading this forcing the vote on Medicare because of his understanding of the figures of everybody supporting Medicare. But when you actually look into the details and you say, would you support more taxes? Would you support not having choice of your doctor? That's part of this healthcare for all thing. Then they say no. So when you say Medicare for all, it sounds good, but in practical nature of it, it's not necessarily something that people support. But when it comes to the situation, people were like, hey, we're going to vote for Nancy Pelosi anyway. People in the Progressive Caucus and the Squad and people like that, because people didn't understand. Jimmy Dore is thinking, like some Philadelphia fans, why don't you just fight? It doesn't matter if you're going to actually lose. Like, you got to fight, you got to play. But they're like, no, we're practical. This is the nature of the game. we can't fight in this situation. Like, there's no point of this. No one's actually going to accept this. We force the vote, and then what? We got to play the politics. We're in here. They have a different understanding. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the squad and those people who are in there don't really think it's practical to force the vote against Nancy Pelosi, because it's just not going to achieve what they want to achieve in that sense. But they just can't talk about it in that situation. But anyway, coming back to this, I just wanted to finish. I think the thing that had been derailed from that is the Josh Hawley situation. Josh Hawley came in and was the first senator to say that, yes, I will object along with my fellow congressmen, and then make it a contested election officially. Then recently you had something with a representative from Missouri finishing off the prayer in Congress, saying something about like the monotheistic God and Brahman and all the other gods that people worship. Then you finish off with amen and a woman. And part of why I make some of these videos, just to get this content out there so I can look back, because I looked back in in 2019, I'd posted something talking about like, amen, that's something that's amen is something that shows that Christianity's patriarchal nature that discriminates against God-fearing women, so it needs to be changed to a people. So that was in 2016, and I had this thing, I think, Among Us razor. I'm going to propose this razor, that no matter how absurd you think something is, if you can think it, if you can state it, someone somewhere is or is about to do that thing seriously. And that's the way this thing shows. So part of me making this content is to have it out there, and I appreciate anybody who decides to take the time to actually read it or listen or whatever. But it's also for me to be like, okay, look, I said this back time, and I can also go back in and review my thoughts at that time and see if they match, and just have some more confidence in the things I perceive and things I think of. And other people have done things like this where they don't really get too many people watching the things. It doesn't really have that much of widespread, but I've benefited from having more information out there when people are sharing their thoughts and then me reflecting off of what they said and it's sparking something in my mind. So if that can do that to one person out there, that's enough for me. Appreciate you listening. It's been a jumbled up video, but let me know what you think in the comment section. The chances are you're going to be listening to this after, because it's like one day before the actual main thing that this is. So I want to see how this develops and things like this, and let me know what you think about it. Let me know what your thoughts were before the actual day, and then when you listen to this, probably after the January 6th, let me know if your thoughts have changed or your expectations. Just let me know. Let's interact in the comment section wherever you might be listening to this. I'll also have a separate location soon where I'll be able to communicate with people. Okay, goodbye.